Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is...
Until the End of Crime. What is your favorite geographic feature of your new homeland?
Hayden, what the fuck? What do you mean, my favorite geographic feature?
What do you like geographically about living in the UK?
That I'm on an island.
Okay.
It's island life. That's what you think of, right?
Yeah, cold, sad island.
I don't actually know, but I don't know if I understand your question entirely or what it is that you're...
That's okay.
...looking for in an answer. I like that the weather doesn't kill all of the living landscape annually.
Okay, so no crispy grass.
Yeah, green grass. It rains enough that the plants are cared for. You don't have to ban watering your plants.
How close do you live to the coast?
Not. I mean, which coast?
Any coast. How far are you away from the sea?
I mean, I'm not exactly center, but I'm pretty close. Not close to water.
Huh. Okay, cool. I don't think today's story takes place anywhere near you.
Okay. Where does it take place? Leeds?
On the northeast.
Newcastle upon Tyne?
It takes place on the northeast coast of England, where the North Sea batters the Victorian stone of Saltburn-by-the-Sea. Do you see that on your map?
No, I'm looking.
The northeast coast of England.
And what is it by the sea?
Saltburn-by-the-Sea.
Oh, Hartlepool is on here. Oh, I see it. It's over by Middlesbrough and by Hartlepool, which is where... Is that where Tamara Thomas is from?
I don't know.
I think she's from Hartlepool.
That sounds kind of right. So, at Saltburn-by-the-Sea, the roar of the waves is constant. A low-frequency static that underpins every conversation and dampens every cry. A landscape that's defined by its verticality, the sheer cliffs dropping into the gray churn of the water. A massive iron pier stretching like almost a skeletal finger into the void of the ocean. A resort town that feels permanently braced against the wind.
A resort town?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds fake.
Saltburn-by-the-Sea is a Victorian seaside and resort town known for its historic attractions and coastal charm. It's just really sad and gray there a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you don't have, like, a Vegas or a San Francisco.
I didn't know this. It's the oldest remaining pier on the Yorkshire coast. And the water-balanced cliff tramway, which is the oldest of its kind in Britain. It has a thriving surf scene and a lively atmosphere with independent shops and galleries.
That is all of England.
Well, it looks like that is what is exceptional about Saltburn-by-the-Sea. Today's case doesn't start with a scream, a bloodstain, or some shallow grave in the woods. It begins a mundane, almost banal domestic ritual. A mother and son taking a walk on a bank holiday afternoon. And, are you laughing?
Mm-hmm. One, you said earlier, unless I'm mistaken, that the hum of the waves swallows the screams. So, of course, it didn't start with a scream. And then, it's just funny to hear you say bank holiday.
Yeah, I really tried to up the British lingo on this one.
Thank you. I'm able to follow it easier that way.
Later I say gents for the men's bathroom. That's British, right?
I guess. I don't know. I don't frequent the men's bathroom. The men's toilets.
Our story hinges on the most ordinary of infrastructures, a public restroom, and how a physical space of less than 300 square feet became a black hole from which a 23-year-old man never emerged.
He disappeared in the toilet.
This is the story of Stephen Clark. On Monday, December 28th, 1992, Stephen Clark entered the gents' public toilets on the lower promenade of Saltburn. His mother Doris waited just outside. She entered the ladies' room adjacent to him, When she emerged, the promenade was empty and Stephen was gone. What?
Adjacent?
I knew you were going to say something. I knew you were going to say something. I knew you were going to say something. I knew. As soon as I said it, I was like, fuck. She's going to say adjacent?
Well, is that you being British?
No, just reading and not making all the right sounds. I did not say adjacent.
Adjacent.
Do British people say adjacent or do they say adjacent?
I don't know, but you said that you were going to add Britishisms.
That I was going to Britify it?
Yeah.
For 28 years, this was a tragic missing persons case. A cold case filed away in the dusty archives of the Cleveland police. A sad story. I don't know. I didn't name the places there.
Cleveland?
Yes. Redcar and East Cleveland.
I did see Redcar on the map.
Yeah. clevelandpolice.uk. So yes, the archives of the Cleveland police. A sad story of a vulnerable young man swallowed by the mist. However, in September of 2020, this narrative would twist violently. The quote, Saltburn Restroom Paradox metastasized into a murder inquiry. The primary suspects were not a shadowy stranger or a local predator. They were Doris and Charles Clark, Stephen's elderly parents. I want to kind of take you through a pretty thorough timeline of everything that led up to this event, and then we'll pick up there. So to understand how Stephen Clark vanished, I want us to first discuss the kind of sensory reality of that afternoon. It was the Monday after Christmas, so a bank holiday, and the festive adrenaline of the season had faded, leaving behind the gray and lethargic lull of a dying year. According to meteorological how would you say that word?
Adjacent.
Stupid.
Meteorological.
Meteorological is what it sounds like. Meteorological. The report, based on the meteorology of the records for North Yorkshire on December 28th, 1992, paint a bleak picture. It was a day defined by moisture and chill. The temperature remained just above freezing, hovering at about 39 to 43 degrees Fahrenheit, or between 4 and 6 degrees Celsius. Why are you shaking your head?
I'm never going to learn Celsius. I'm not doing it.
The wind was light but biting, blowing from the northeast, a direct injection of polar air coming off the sea. The most critical element was the visibility. Reports indicate that it was mostly cloudy and misty, with several, quote, fog patches, which I think kind of fits the existing meteorological narrative I have about the UK, which is that it's gray and foggy.
Pathetic fallacy.
Do most people not think cold, foggy, and gray when they think of the UK?
Hayden, do you know what pathetic fallacy is? Because I didn't when I got here.
Okay, go ahead and explain.
It's a literary device where the weather in a piece of literature reflects the tone or the mood of the story. So pathetic fallacy is you thinking that everything here is doom and gloom and gray and wet and seasonal affective disorder.
Listen, I didn't create the fallacy. I didn't propagate that stereotype, but
it's not a fallacy.
That's what I know.
That's the thing. When a kid said pathetic fallacy to me, and they said it in their accent, and so I thought that they said prophetic fallacy, but I still didn't understand, because to me a fallacy is something that's wrong.
Right, it's a disorder of thought.
But pathetic fallacy is where the mood reflects what is going on in the story. Like where the weather in the story reflects what is going on in the story. There is no fallacy. I swear to God, when I came over here, it was like I was teaching a different language.
However we see it, I don't think that there's Despite the huge reach of Until the End of Crime, I don't think we're going to be able to actively subvert those misconceptions of the UK.
Are we trying to?
This meteorological report was particularly true of the landscape that was close to the hills and the coastline. This is really crucial evidence. Saltburn is not a flat landscape. It is a town of gradients and cliffs, and fog in this region does not sit idly. Instead, it rolls and shifts and is known for obscuring sight lines and even to a degree muffling sound, which I just imagine has to be the fucking densest fog that's ever existed. At 3 p.m., the winter light was already beginning its retreat. At this latitude, in late December, sunset occurs before 4 p.m. Usually by 3:45 p.m., the civil twilight fades into the nautical twilight, and the world becomes dark.
You can't scratch your hand while you're talking.
Sorry, it was itching. Which part do I need to repeat?
I don't know, but you know that it's been dark since we've been on this call, right?
In late December, sunset occurs before 4 p.m., and then by 3:45 p.m., the civil twilight fades into the nautical twilight, and the world turns dark.
I got on at 4.
And it was already dark?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I have groceries coming between 8 and 9, and I'm like, well, that's right now because it's so dark outside. But no, it's 5:30.
It's only 5:30?
Only is crazy. Only is crazy.
Well, I just, for some reason, thought it was so much later there right now.
It's 6 hours behind you. Nope, ahead of you.
Ahead of me.
Yeah.
When Stephen and Doris arrived at the promenade, they were walking into the teeth of the encroaching night. The promenade would have been damp, the Victorian street lamps perhaps flickering to life, struggling to... You can't just cough in the middle of recording.
I said hold on. I was doing this waiting for you to stop. I didn't do it in the middle of me talking. That would be ludicrous.
This is ludicrous. Tell me how you feel. If Stephen Clark left that restroom...
Was he there? Did he go? I'm so confused. Did his parents just kill him on Christmas? What is happening?
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I promise.
I feel like we got there a little bit already. You were like...
I said we're going to go over the timeline and then we're going to catch back up to my last statement.
Something about violence and elderly parents and then...
Yes. I didn't say that's what happened though. If Stephen Clark left that restroom, he walked out into a world that was already half erased by the weather, stepping into what was likely a gray void.
I feel like I'm stepping into a Roald Dahl poem book.
The location of the disappearance is
Roald Dahl? Roald Dahl?
I mean, I can see how it's spelled. I think it's Roald Dahl. Dahl.
Okay, sorry. The world was erased by the weather.
So these public toilets were situated on the lower promenade in Saltburn, near the entrance of the pier. And the geography here kind of dictates the movement. So to the east of this location lies the North Sea, which is a hostile and freezing expanse. And to the west, the steep imposing banks led up to the town of Saltburn. To the north and south stretches the beach and the promenade, and the toilet themselves are simply a brick structure, meant to simply be functional. Also, to this restroom, there is no back exit. There are also no windows large enough for an adult male to climb through. The only way in is the only way out. This fact kind of transforms the restroom from a building into a fucking magician's box. If Doris Clark was standing outside or nearby, the vector for Stephen's escape was incredibly narrow. He would have had to exit at the precise moment her back was turned or while she was inside the ladies' room. But even if he had left unseen, where could he go? Stephen Clark was not an athlete. He was not a man who could vault a fence or sprint up a path. He was actually a man who had a, quote, pronounced limp and a severely damaged left arm. His gait was described by the police as being, quote, severely impaired. So to leave that area, he had 3 options. The pier, which was a dead end, the cliffs, which would have been a very demanding and slow climb for Stephen, or the promenade, which is kind of a big open space that even in the mist would have been pretty visible, right? Pretty good shadow detection. Stephen Clark, did I mention that he was disabled?
You said that his gait was severely impaired and something was wrong with his arm.
But I didn't talk about it at the beginning that he was disabled?
No.
Okay. To really understand this kind of vulnerability that Stephen had, we need to rewind 20 years before that day in Saltburn. Stephen Clark was born in Colchester, Essex in 1969, and he was an average healthy child until the age of 2. In 1971, while his family was living near Edinburgh, Scotland, a catastrophic event occurred in the town of Kirkliston. Doris Clark went shopping. Unbeknownst to her, 2-year-old Stephen toddled out of the house following her. He wandered into the road. Stephen was then struck by a lorry. And I had to fucking look up what a lorry is.
It's a truck, isn't it?
It is. Like a goods delivery truck. I looked it up and the image was a fucking 18-wheeler, big rig. And then I was like, well, so why is it called a lorry? And that's what they called good delivery carts when they were still horse-drawn. And they think it comes from the verb lurry, which is to run. So, struck by a lorry, the impact was devastating. The toddler was thrown into a coma that lasted a month, and when he woke, he was no longer the same child. The accident left him with permanent life-altering disabilities. Again, his arm was severely damaged, rendering it largely functionless. His leg was also damaged, resulting in that distinctive limp that defined his movement. This accident became the center of the Clark family dynamic. It created a bond of necessity between his parents and himself, and very likely created a strong protective instinct in Doris and Charles, and even a sense of guilt for the accident that happened. In the early 1980s, the Clark family immigrated to South Africa, settling near Johannesburg. This move placed Stephen in a radically different environment. He attended the Muriel Brand School, which was a specialized institution for children with disabilities. For 10 years, Stephen lived under the South African sun. He learned Afrikaans, he adapted, he grew from being a catastrophically injured child into a resilient young man. This period is significant because it highlights that Stephen was incredibly adaptive. He was able to make adaptations that suited his life the way he needed. He wasn't helpless. He navigated a new culture. He navigated a new specialized education system. The police have noted that his life in Marsk was different from the more restricted way of life overseas. In South Africa, security concerns and the structure of his school limited a lot of independent movement. And so in Marsk, in a quiet English village, the leash was loosened and he had freedom. And perhaps that freedom was what made him more vulnerable. The family returned to the UK in the early 1990s, eventually settling in Marsk-by-the-Sea in the summer of 91. Marsk is a tight-knit... Do you think it's Marsk? M-A-R-S-K-E? Would it be Marsky? Marsk?
I don't know.
Marsky, eventually settling in Marsky-by-the-Sea in the summer of 1991. Marsky is a tight-knit, somewhat insular coastal community.
You're stopping and tripping yourself up over words that I think can be pronounced multiple ways, but you just blew past adjacent. And I don't think that one fits that bill.
Stephen, despite his challenges, was thriving in his own way. He worked for the Leonard Cheshire Home and attended the Rathbone Society in Redcar. And just for clarification, the Leonard Cheshire Homes is a home for people with special needs, and the Rathbone Society is a society meant to further and help people with different handicaps.
He had a physical disability, but did he have any intellectual?
So I don't know. That was not something I could find. Everything described his physical disability. Based on some of what I read, it seems like maybe he had some kind of developmental disability after that in terms of mentation, but I'm not sure. Just before he disappeared, Stephen had actually won the Apprentice of the Year award at the Rathbone Society, and ultimately it does serve to contradict the narrative of Stephen being a hopeless or depressed individual. He was achieving. He was recognized. He was sociable and, quote, liked by the friends who knew him. He was also, according to his parents, incredibly frugal. Charles Clark described it as a running joke in the family that Stephen hated spending his own money. And this frugality would play a kind of bizarrely pivotal role in the events of December 28th, which we are going to jump to now. The day of the disappearance. The story of the disappearance roughly begins at 2 p.m. on the day that Stephen went missing. There was a minor domestic negotiation between Charles, Stephen's father, and Stephen himself. They were preparing to go to a football match in Middlesbrough, and Stephen wanted to go. Charles told him that he could come, but that he would have to pay for his own ticket. And Stephen, true to his frugal reputation, refused. He decided to stay home. And this decision split the family unit in terms of Charles leaving for Middlesbrough, which would ultimately give him a rock-solid alibi for the time of the disappearance. Stephen was with Doris. At 2:30 p.m., with Charles gone, Stephen decided he wanted to go for a walk, and Doris agreed to accompany him. They set out from their home in Marski, walking along the beach towards Saltburn. At a leisurely pace, this walk would take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. They would have been walking with the sea on their left, with the wind in their faces. And, of course, we can't know what they were talking about, if there was any conversation at all. At 3 p.m., they arrived at the Saltburn Lower Promenade. This time is corroborated by the missing persons report, and Stephen had said he needed to use the toilet. They stopped at the public conveniences near the pier. Is that what the bathrooms are called in the UK? Conveniences? Public conveniences?
Toilets.
So, action 1, Stephen enters the gents. Action 2, Doris waits a moment and then decides to use the ladies' room. This is where the timeline fractures. Doris enters the ladies. She is inside for a few minutes, and when she comes out, she expects to see Stephen waiting for her, perhaps even cold or leaning against the brick wall. However, Stephen is not there. Doris waits, and she sees 2 men and a little girl near the entrance. She scanned the promenade and noticed that the mist was thickening and that light was falling. She did check the gents and called into it, but it was empty. What happens next ends up being one of the most scrutinized decisions of Doris Clark's life. After waiting for what she describes as, quote, quite a while, and her wording has varied a little over the years, she decided that Stephen must have walked home without her. This was a 3-mile walk, and the kind of running joke theory suggests that Stephen might have just been being independent, or perhaps stubborn, or potentially he had started walking home just to keep warm. Whatever that kind of internal logic was that Doris Clark was working with, she turned her back on the empty restroom and began the walk back to Marski alone. Doris arrived home around 3:45 or 4 p.m. She unlocked the door, expecting to find Stephen there, but the house was empty. The silence of the house was heavy. She waited, and the clock ticked past 4 p.m., and the sun set. Charles returned home from the football match around 6 p.m. When he walked in, Doris told him Stephen isn't here. Panic set in. Charles and Doris drove to Saltburn. They searched the beach in the dark. They called the police. But the police response was tempered by protocol. Stephen was 23. He was an adult. Even with a disability, adults are allowed to go missing. They are allowed to walk away. The golden hour, that critical window immediately following a disappearance, was lost to the assumption that Stephen was simply out. When the police eventually searched the Clark home, they found a tableau of a life interrupted, not abandoned. Stephen had left behind his wallet, his glasses, and his watch. And these 3 items form this kind of triad of impossibility for a voluntary disappearance. Stephen was frugal. He couldn't leave without money. How could he start any kind of new life or experience without it? The watch. Stephen was very much about his routines, and this kind of item to not be with him would mean great difficulty in sticking to those routines. And then lastly, his glasses. Stephen had pretty serious visual impairments, and leaving his glasses behind would render the world a blur. It would have made navigation for Stephen dangerous and even difficult in some instances. He left these at his home when they left at roughly 2:30 p.m., suggesting that he fully intended to return. In the weeks and months that followed, the search was extensive. Search parties checked the cliffs, they checked the sea, the timeline was reconstructed, but there was no physical evidence, no body washed ashore, no clothing was found snagged on the pier, no blood, no struggle. Stephen Clark had just become a ghost. For 7 years, the Clarks lived in the purgatory of the missing. Then, in 1999, the silence was broken by a piece of paper. On September 24th, 1999, an anonymous letter arrived at the Ginsborough police station. Guisborough? The fuck? Who's making up these names? Gisborough. The letter arrived at the Gisborough police station. The letter was handwritten and was, quote, very precise in nature. The author claimed to know that Stephen was dead, and they claimed to know who was responsible, and they named names. The police took this letter seriously. In November 1999, In November 1999, detectives visited the Clark home to discuss its contents. We don't know exactly what that meeting was like, what grief, anger, what anything could have looked like. But we do know that they were essentially told that they were being accused of murdering their own son. The letter, for all its precision, did not lead to a body. This letter was ultimately filed away and became kind of a ticking bomb that wouldn't detonate for another 20 years. The police later released excerpts of that letter in 2020, hoping to identify the handwriting. Quote, Stephen left his personal belongings at home when he disappeared. His wallet, glasses, and watch, the letter recited, mirroring the police's own knowledge. Was the letter writer some kind of witness, a local busybody filled by gossip? The author was eventually identified during the 2020 review, but their identity remains protected. And since no charges were brought, we have to kind of assume their information, while precise, did not hold up to any kind of evidentiary standards. In September 2020, the Cleveland and North Yorkshire Cold Case Unit blew the dust off the file, and they reclassified the case from missing person to suspected murder. The logic was grimly statistical. After 28 years, there was no proof of life, no bank activity, no medical records, no contact. Stephen Clark was dead, and if he was dead, someone killed him. And then, on a morning in September 2020, the unimaginable happened. Doris Clark, then 81, and Charles Clark, 78, answered a knock at their door. They were arrested on suspicion of murdering their son. The optics were jarring. Two elderly, frail, former police officers, yes, Charles and Doris had both served in the police force, were taken into custody. Their neat, semi-detached home in Marski was cordoned off. Forensics teams descended. They dug up the garden. They searched the house for DNA, for blood, for a fragment of bone hidden for 3 decades. The arrest sent shockwaves through the UK. Stephen's sister Victoria described the moment. I felt like the whole world was spinning. There's absolutely no way they would hurt Stephen. In a move that defied legal convention and public relations strategy, the Clarks did something extraordinary while under investigation. They invited a film crew into their home. The resulting ITV documentary, Accused of Murdering Our Son, the Stephen Clark Story, hosted by ex-detective Mark Williams Thomas, offered an unprecedented, if not uncomfortable, glimpse into the lives of the accused.
ITV is where I was watching Big Brother.
What does ITV stand? What does I stand for in ITV? Like Me TV? I?
Probably internet, right?
Oh. The documentary ultimately worked as kind of a cultural Rorschach test. People came away from it either feeling sympathetic. Here were 2 confused elderly parents being harassed by a police force, desperate to close a cold case. And then there was the suspicious view. Their behavior was, quote, odd. Doris was filmed chatting casually with a friend over tea about the ordeal. Charles was filmed walking to the shop to buy a newspaper that detailed his own arrest. They kind of lacked the histrionic grief the public would expect. As the documentary noted, though, quote, being a bit of an odd duck is not a crime.
Also, people have been suspicious of them since the 90s.
Yeah,
so,
for 30 plus years.
Well, didn't the letter get left in 1999?
Yes.
I think if they hadn't faced decades of people being suspicious of them, there might be some histrionics, but their son has been missing, is likely dead, I suppose, for over 30 years. And for the majority of that, they've had people probably side-eyeing them. So I think expecting people to have an over-the-top reaction would be, I guess, logical if the time span was shorter. But because it's not, that doesn't seem... It would be suspicious if they were. Oh my goodness, we could never, because they've probably been saying that for 26 years.
You know, I think it's the same thing with every decision in a true crime case. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Right.
You take a polygraph. Okay. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You act a certain way. You speak a certain way on a 911 call. You are either not grief-ridden enough, or you're overly dramatic. You're playing at something. You're acting. There is a no-win. I don't think you can be the loved one of someone who is murdered or missing and not face scrutiny for the decisions you make.
Yeah.
That scrutiny serves a purpose, right? There are times when it brings the guilty to justice, but there are also times when it takes a truly traumatic situation and further entrenches that trauma. And I don't know. I don't see a good solution. I don't see something that operates in a way that allows space for both at the same time. And, you know, we give, and I say this loosely, but we give police, detectives, investigators a hard time on this show. We do.
Well, because in most of the cases that we look at, we can see errors.
Yeah. The truth is given the situation, I don't know if we would do any better, you know?
No.
And so it's one of those things where I'm like...
You wouldn't. I would.
That's fine. I'll be the social worker that they send with the police officer. You can be the hardened police officer.
I think that that's part of the issue, which goes back to the same thing. When we're looking at things, it's with the benefit of hindsight. And then when we're talking about giving detectives, giving police a hard time, well, you love to bring cases that haven't been closed yet. So then clearly they didn't do everything that they could have done. No, I'm just joking. No, but sometimes it does get chalked up to police error that something isn't solved yet. I mean, I take issue with the fact... I guess I take issue with several things. One, why did she wait 2 hours before she phoned the police? Why did she wait until her husband came home? And then, I could also see myself being like, I'm just going to wait until so-and-so comes home and give it some time and see if he walks in the door between now and then.
Maybe he got a little lost. There are no phones at this point. I don't want to be the histrionic mom that calls because my adult son with a disability has gone missing, but it's only been... I see the justification. From a different time. Yes.
Where maybe as a woman she wouldn't make that phone call.
Zeitgeist. It also her and her husband were God, we're obnoxious. Her and her husband were both former police officers too. And so, they might have had some kind of perspective that we don't understand, especially in a British context.
Excuse you. I'm always going to take issue with adults are allowed to go missing. Yeah, well, I'm not calling you because he packed up his shit and headed off into the night. I'm calling you because we were out on a walk and we stopped. We got separated because probably J.K. Rowling wouldn't allow them to use the same toilets. And then he never came back home. It's not, and then especially the fact that both of them had worked in a police law enforcement capacity. You would think that, you would hope that they would be taken a little bit more seriously by people that they potentially worked with.
We're talking wildly out of character.
Right.
Which I think would suggest at the bare minimum some kind of psychotic not even necessarily psychotic, but some kind of mental health episode.
Sure.
The police grilled Doris and Charles. They asked about the running joke of Stephen's money, his decision to walk home. They even asked, "Did you kill him?" And Doris and Charles maintained their innocence. Doris called it absolutely ludicrous, which sounds British.
Ludicrous?
Absolutely ludicrous. In February 2021, after 17 weeks of bail and anxiety, the Crown Prosecution Service and Cleveland Police announced that Doris and Charles were released without charge. The investigation against them was dropped. What changed? We don't know.
Well, there was no evidence to arrest them to begin with. I mean...
Hold on. Don't get too far. I said that wrong. What changed? A new witness and a new timeline shattered the police's theory.
Can you arrest somebody in the UK just based on a theory?
I don't know. I'm not a UK resident.
Yeah, but you did the research for this case.
What does that matter? What does that even remotely matter?
You're right. It means nothing. I'll just tell the case from here because I live in the UK.
They were arrested.
But there was no body. There's no proof that he was murdered. There's no proof that he's dead. Adults are allowed to disappear if that's going to be the case that we're going to bring.
I think your argument's fair. I think that it's incredibly fair. It's not what happened here.
I think it would breed some contention if I were to fire back at a police department that arrested me after they said adults are allowed to disappear. I would be like, well, then he must have disappeared, dude, because that's what you lot said.
Yeah, you said it was fine.
You lot. That's British.
During the intense media coverage of late 2020, a woman came forward. She had seen the news reports, she saw the face of Stephen Clark, and she remembered. She reported that on December 28th, 1992, in the late afternoon, she was walking on the high street in Marski with her family. She saw Stephen Clark, and she knew him by sight. Marski is a small place. The details were specific and devastating to the prosecution's timeline. It happened in late afternoon, but, quote, it hadn't yet got dark. This places the sighting roughly between 3:30 and 3:50 p.m. The location was High Street in Marski, and the witness reports seeing Stephen walking towards the Ship Inn away from his home. This sighting changed everything. If this witness is correct, Stephen survived the restroom. He did not die in Saltburn. He exited the toilet perhaps while Doris was in the ladies. He returned to Marski. He managed to travel the 3 miles back to his hometown. Did he catch a bus? Did he get a lift? Did he walk faster than what most people thought was possible?
Well, probably not a lift because that's an elevator.
Right. Yep, you got me.
Sorry.
No, I love it.
It was so stupid.
Also, he was alive while Doris was walking home. If Doris arrived home at 4, Stephen was spotted nearby just minutes before. But if he was in Marski near his home, why didn't he go there? Why was he walking towards the pub? Enter the girlfriend theory. This brings us back to a comment made by Charles Clark. He claimed that days before the disappearance, Stephen had met a girl at the Ship Inn in Saltburn. Note, there are ship inns in both Saltburn and Marski. The sighting was near the Marski Ship Inn, but Charles referred to the Saltburn pub as the meeting place. I'm kind of confused on these details. Charles claimed that Stephen had started, quote, dating this girl. There are questions about the actuality of this situation. If Stephen was seen walking towards the Ship Inn in Marski at 3:45 p.m., was he going to meet someone? Was he lured away from his parents on the promise of a date, a meeting? This theory aligns with the sociable character description that we have. It explains why he might leave the toilet without waiting for his mother. But it fails to explain the missing wallet and glasses. Why would he go on a date without money or the ability to see clearly?
So his parents were aware of this girl?
No information about mom knowing, but dad saying that he had heard Steven say this. And really it was just that he had expressed interest in this woman. I don't know. So really and truly, at the end of all of this, we're left with a few facts. Fact A, a disabled man with limited mobility entered a toilet and vanished. Fact B, his mother waits, then leaves him there. C, a credible witness says that she saw him 3 miles away alive 45 minutes later, but he's never seen again.
Nothing? There's no...
We also know that Charles has an alibi for this entire situation. He was at a football match, lots of witnesses. For Doris to kill Steven, she would have had to have done it alone, in daylight or twilight, in a public place, or intercept him in Marski, kill him, dispose of the body, which has never been found, and return home to play the grieving mother, all within a window of minutes. And then the witness, the sighting in Marski effectively exonerates the parents for a Saltburn murder. If he was alive in Marski, then the Saltburn timeline really doesn't matter. Ultimately, we're left with a case that is double-edged. The tragedy of a young man who vanished, a life of challenge and resilience cut short. And there's the tragedy of the parents who spent their twilight years branded as murderers. No forensic evidence has ever been found in this case, and now Doris and Clark are free and remain free.
No, Doris and Charles?
Doris and Charles Clark. There really aren't any other alternative theories other than the girlfriend theory. Some of the information points to potentially falling off of cliffs in the dark, maybe his body being carried away by the tide, maybe he met a stranger at the ship inn that he was reported to seeing going towards or entering. Maybe someone there saw his vulnerability and took advantage of it. Did he intentionally just walk into the sea? We have no real answers. To this day, there's still a reward for information leading to the conviction, and it stands at £10,000.
Do you not think the most likely scenario is that this was something accidental?
It's kind of Occam's razor for me, right? Whatever's most likely is probably what happened.
Yeah.
And I do think that based on our knowledge of his disabilities, the weather, the darkness, I do assume that something accidental happened, but I also think that accident could have been maybe getting hit by a vehicle, maybe near the ship's inn, his body disposed of. I think that it could have been... It's hard to know. One eyewitness 30 years later doesn't strike me as incredibly credible.
Nope.
But her testimony, her words are considered to be credible. And so, I don't know. I just saw that this... I looked up... Let me think of the exact search terms. I think I typed in weird missing person cases. And this came back as one because this man used the restroom and was never seen again except for an eyewitness who saw him and reported it 30 years later to authorities. Which means that she would have held on to that for years and years.
The only way that I buy it is if the next day there was tremendous news coverage and she was like, wait, I saw him walking last night. But even at that, it could have been the night before. It sounds like he took an evening stroll regularly because he said he was going to go for a walk and his mom said, I'll go with you. But that's not to say that he did do it regularly. It just feels very, regular, I suppose. No. Can you not search for weird missing persons cases?
But this one was in the UK. I thought that would bring you joy. Bing, bang, bong. Sing, sang, song. Ding, dang, dong.
You think that a specific type of case that I've told you I don't care for, that changes geographically?
I love these missing person cases.
I know you do.
These unsolved mysteries.
Yeah, bring me something fun.
What's fun about true crime?
Well, I'm going to tell you in our next episode.
Is it a bank robbery gone wrong?
Nope.
Did someone die?
No.
I'll start preparing myself now.
For the disappointment?
Yeah.
Nobody died in your case.
Oh, okay. But we know he probably died.
But nobody did die.
I mean, there was no gruesome murder that we know about. Is that what you think? You think it was just some kind of like weird natural event?
I think that most likely he, accidentally fell into the ocean.
Just like drowned and was carried off. I don't know. I don't think he's alive. You know, people... I mean, there is such sentiment of hatred and vitriol against people with special needs or disabilities. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what Saltburn or Marsky was like, and let's not kid ourselves, I don't know what it is like, but I know that hatred can run deep.
Yeah.
And so it does bring up questions like, well, was it purely accidental?
What's it called?
What?
The place that he was?
Saltburn?
If I take the bus and leave right now, I can be there in 11 hours and 18 minutes.
That's so much longer than what I thought you were going to say.
Okay, but that's everywhere. To get anywhere here by taking the train or the bus, it feels like minimum 2 hours anywhere. And you have to go into London to get anywhere else in this country. I mean, you have to go into London to get the train to go up to through York, through Eagles Cliff to Saltburn, Hartlepool. Yeah, I think most likely scenario is that he was in a predicament of a situation that because he was not able-bodied, he wasn't able to get himself out of.
Yeah, I don't know. That seems most likely. It's hard to believe that people can just go off and die by accident. But I know that's probably far more common than being murdered.
And not be found. I think usually they're found.
But you know what? It's just like that case. I never did this case, and I won't do this case. But there was a man who went missing, and everyone suspected his husband. They had a rough relationship.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was bad. And then years went by, and eventually they found that he had killed himself roughly 300 feet away from their home.
Yeah.
Or 300 yards. Something between 300 feet and 300 yards. And for years, the husband was suspected as being a murderer. And it turns out his husband literally took his own life not even a mile away from their home. Excuse me.
There was like an antique bird cage or something, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I can't remember all the details. I just remembered I was really excited to do the story and to be like, the husband did it, and it was a gay couple. And then I listened to I listened to the podcast episode, and then I heard an update somewhere else, and I was like, oh shit, he didn't kill his husband, which is great. I'm glad he didn't kill his husband.
Right.
It just made for less interesting storytelling.
A sadder story.
I know that sounds, me saying that sounds absolutely terrible. It does not paint me in a favorable light.
I'm not sure that you're that concerned about it because you have made it very clear that you get disappointed when there isn't a gruesome murder in my case.
What can I say? I know what I like.
I know what I don't like, and yet here you come, bringing it to me all the time.
Here you come again. You know what? Next case, I won't do a disappearance.
Famous last words. You're going to be like, I tried 300 other cases and none of them were interesting to me.
No. I'm not going to do a disappearance. I'm going to do something that has a definitive end.
I've been burned before.
You'll be burned again.
Yeah,
it's life, sweetheart.
Does it have to happen on my own podcast as often as it does?
At work, we refer to it as the fallacy of fairness.
The fallacy of fairness?
Mm-hmm. A cognitive distortion that life is or should be fair.
Well, no, but in this curated space that you and I have, there are two people here, and it would be very easy for it to not happen in this space.
Life's not fair.
Okay, Naomi.
Told Manila she was her hero and then sent her packing.
Hey, you know what they say. Don't meet your hero.
Send her to the house. That's all we've got for this episode.
Wait, I need to say that it was a great case. I'm so glad you told it.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And that you thought it was great.
No, it was good. You just, that the missing makes me crazy.
It's
because
not for you, Diva.
I'm not, like, I have to almost disassociate when you're asking me questions about it and when you're talking about it, because I do just want to go get on the bus and travel for damn near 12 hours to be there and be like, let's solve this.
That's all we've got for this episode. Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.
If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, God willing, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review.
Make sure you're downloading our episodes.
Yeah.
And if you're needing to, fact check us, a complete list of sources can be found in the episode description.
Recommend us to a friend. And if you are able and willing to help us produce this pod, sign up for our Patreon.
The link to joining our supportive bestie tier for only $2 a month is listed in the show notes. Also, make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out with questions or episode suggestions or, whatever.
Or whatever, exactly.